There's one thing that's kind of one thing that I've noticed, and I know that this isn't California, you're in Nevada, but the modus operandi seems for the fighters who test positive for performance-enhancing drugs, especially in California. They generally, they deny it, and then they do their appeal process. And it seems like you can almost write the book, you can see it coming. California will reduce the suspension by 6 months, and the fine will stay the same $2,500. But it happens, it's the same, it seems to be the same result. Happened with Sean Shirk, happened with, who was the last one? Chael Sonnen, and it's happened with others. The ones that admit to it and stay with it, like Hermes Franca, he served the whole 1 year, and it still cost him the full amount. So how is it that, what is the process? How is it that you guys look at it maybe a little bit differently than California and arrive at the decision to either reduce the suspension or modify the initial suspensions that come out?
Well, we do a little different. We had the same process about 15, 20 years ago as California, where the executive director actually imposes the suspension, then you have the hearing.
Right.
And the attorneys at the time, just before I got involved, they said, look, it really should be the other way around. You really should have the hearing, like any court case where there's no decision yet. You have the hearing, then you make the decision. So it's not reviewing the decision, it's reviewing the facts and then making a decision. Then if you want to appeal, you go through the court system. So that's how we do it. So when I file a complaint with the AG's office, I'm not suspending anybody. I even put the person on temporary suspension just as a status quo, but I'm not making any decision on, and we try to have a hearing as soon as we can, so even if he was innocent, he wouldn't have lost any time, because it's a month or two at most where they wouldn't have fought anyway. So we just do a temporary suspension as status quo, because if they do have steroids in the system, you don't want them to go somewhere else and fight 2 weeks later. But then we go forward the process and give both sides, the prosecution side as well as the defense side, to present their evidence. This stuff is very, medical stuff already is very seriously when they do tests for blood work or for diseases and things like that. But especially for drugs, this is a very highly structured, regulated area in all of it itself. How you treat the samples, how the samples are tested, how you do a backup check on it in case it comes back positive. That's called the confirmation level of that. So, and not surprisingly, most people pass their test because they don't have anything in their system. But when they do pass or they do fail, then some additional criteria is added to it. And some safeguards are added to it as well. So, the false positive levels or ratios are so rare. I wish it was 0%, but it's well below 0.1%. So you have that, but then you have the ability. There's a B sample they can test, and we let the fighter have it tested anywhere he wants, as long as it's an accredited lab. So they have that ability to do that. We work with the fighter if there's something where, maybe could I have gotten a false positive from this type of I've taken this medication, or I was taking this supplement. Of course, usually they don't tell you about it until after they get busted. But still, we work with them to see that. And there's times where I'll say to the lab, hey, he was taking creatine. Could that have caused this? No, it couldn't have caused this. They already kind of know that stuff. But I still want to check on it as well. So. But you do that. So our process starts a little differently, and I kind of, it's kind of mixed emotions. You're like, well, if your guy admits to it, you want to give him a break. By another time, he's admitting to it after the fact, trying to get a break, And what if a guy is innocent? He shouldn't admit to it because he was innocent anyway. But he's got to be able to refute. The burden's on the prosecution, but they can't just say, well, we think your test is wrong. That's our defense.
Right.
I didn't do it. I think the test is wrong. But if they can present something, and it's never happened in MMA to my knowledge, but in other sports, in track and field or so, they've been able to show something where, hey, I took something and it was tainted without my knowledge, or so if they have evidence like that, bring it on. But it's never happened with us yet, but if it happens, they have that full and fair opportunity to present if need be. What I kind of see it more so is, I think the commission, unless there's really something, either the guy's clearly doesn't take any responsibility or he's being very obstructive or something, that they may want to, sometimes they didn't even show up at the hearing. Well, then maybe you're going to get a couple extra months. Or if you do show up and there's some kind of legitimate question you had, you definitely did something wrong. You definitely did something you shouldn't have, and you should have known. You either knew or shouldn't have known that you were doing it. but you did take some remedial actions. You take responsibility, and then maybe knock off a month or so. But for the most part, the suspension should be what it is, and the fact that you were upfront about it or honest, that's for going forward.
Right.
You didn't know. You should have known situation. You're going to get the same, probably going to get the same suspension, maybe a little less of a fine, but the real benefit to you is in the future. You come back and you fight the rest of your fights. You're clean. You're a good licensee. They're doing silly in the ring or the octagon. That's going to go a long way, and not so much just with the commission, maybe even more so with the fans. I mean, it does bother me. There's a lot of fans out there who, a lot less than there used to be, but that see nothing wrong with taking steroids and using it so you can beat up your opponent more. You know, and it's a very, 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 very small minority, but it's still bothersome that it's still out there. So I think most of the people, I give a lot of credit to the baseball hearings before Congress. A lot more people out there say, you know what? No, this isn't looking for an edge. This is cheating. This is no different than hopping on a subway train during a marathon, or doing a dive, or loading up your gloves, or whatever, or poisoning the other guy's water bottle. I mean, there's different levels perhaps, but it's still cheating, and there's a lot less people who see that, and hopefully that helps with the athletes being able to say no. No, I'm not going to do that. That's not right. I'm not going to do that. Or on the flip side, I think a lot of times, not an excuse, but I think it was a reason for a lot of guys. They think, hey, the other guy's doing it, so I'm not looking for an unfair advantage. I want a level playing field. So I think he's doing it, and here's why I think he's doing it. And no one's testing him. He's fighting somewhere where they don't do drug tests or whatever. And so I need to take it just to have the level playing field. Now they can have a lot more comfort level. Not that nobody's taking it. I mean, some people probably still are, but that a lot less people are taking it. If people do take it, they're going to get caught. The win's going to be changed to a no contest. The opponent's going to be suspended. You're going to get a lot of good public relations that you've passed your drug test because you didn't do it, as opposed to no one will ever know. Hey, he beat me. He was on steroids. I have the loss. He has the win. He got the big contract. I didn't. He got to make the Yankees while I'm still stuck in AAA. All that stuff's kind of gone from baseball and boxing and MMA to some extent, to the extent I think it can be at this point in time. So hopefully that's another reason. Hopefully there's a lot less incentive for the fighters who somehow rationalize themselves, hey, I'm not cheating because I'm just trying to have an even playing field because the other guy is doing it. Well, the test results kind of show that it's very rare that guys are still doing it, at least to the level of having an effect and getting caught on it. So hopefully that gives a lot more comfort to these fighters, and again gives them the ability to say no, both on ethical grounds as well as on factual grounds. Say, I'm not going to do it.
So Nevada does pre-fight testing. Do they test a few months in advance?
Sometimes, we don't have the budget we used. About 4 years ago, we got a really good budget for it. We did a lot. I think one of the fight cards, I think it was Lesnar Couture, I think was the fight card. We tested 12 guys about a month out, including the main event, Lesnar and Couture. And then later we tested Pacquiao and Mayweather when we thought they were going to fight. They ended up fighting. We tested them. That's why I think a lot of people are saying, well, the commission doesn't want that because they don't want to catch people. We tested Brock Lesnar and Randy Couture a month before one of the biggest fights in MMA history. We tested Mayweather Pacquiao a month before, or actually about 2 months before what would have been positive. The fight gets canceled. And who are we afraid to test? I don't understand that. Unfortunately, with this budget issue, the economy, our budget got severely cut, and we still have some budget for that, but not a big one. But we did ramp up the amount of fights we do fight night. I think the last UFC I tested 13 guys. Maybe a year ago it would have been about 11 guys. Maybe 2 years ago it would have been about 8 guys, and now it's 13. And if we had, hopefully get some more manpower too, might be the ability to test everybody would be good. But sometimes I like that little bit of randomness thrown in there. I think might be sometimes a little bit, sometimes helps than just everybody's getting tested. It's always better to test more than less.
Right.
I think it's better to test everybody than not test everybody. But that doesn't mean there's not some benefits of having these this randomness to it as well. But yeah, 13 guys is a lot of guys.
Yeah. Do you think that pre-fight drug testing would help eliminate any doubt or any thought of these guys?
Yeah, I think more testing is better than less testing.
Okay.
So yeah, I think that's good. It's a little more difficult in the MMA boxing world because the fighters they may fight in Nevada in January, and then they don't fight in Nevada again until December, and they had 3 fights in between in different jurisdictions. So they might fight here in 97, and then not fight here again until 2000, and then not fight here again until 2007. So unlike, say, some of these Olympic committees that regulate every sport they're in, track and field, U.S. Track and field, for all the track meets of that level, those athletes, the Olympic athletes, they're involved. So they can follow these fighters, so I mean these athletes. So every time this guy runs a 100-meter dash, this Olympic caliber sprinter, U.S. Track and Field, USTNF, is going to have some sort of jurisdiction, so they can follow this guy through the entire year or through several years. Here, if a guy fights here in 2006 and then we don't see him again until 2010, we have no jurisdiction to test him in 2007, 2008, and 2009. So it makes it a little more difficult. So we have to be a little more limited in what we do. So you try to spend your money a little more wiser.
What's the likelihood of getting all of the states on board to adopt certain standards for drug testing? Do you think that'd be
really tough? I think fight night might be a little easier, but with budget issues, fight night you can at least pass it on to the promoter. They're getting the benefit from it. But a fighter may not have a promoter, but he's training for something. They might fight for one promoter one time, one the other. But fight night, there's a direct benefit for the promoter, so that's a little easier. I think we've actually achieved some of that through the ABC. But the other stuff, it just makes it very difficult. Now, one of the things I think with Major League Baseball, they're doing it on their own. I'm not sure exactly what Zuffa's testing policies are, but I know they do test people before the Ultimate Fighter. They give them drug tests, and if you fail your drug tests, you're not going to be on the Ultimate Fighter. I don't know if they do that with their other shows or not. I've heard that they do in some situations test their own fighters before they sign their contracts or in other situations. So hopefully, I don't know if Strikeforce does that as well, or King of the Cage or whatever, but you hope that some of these promoters do take some of that on. You think before you sign a fighter, you want to know whether he's going to get suspended or not for his next fight. So I hope some of the bigger promoters especially, and same with boxing, with maybe a Top Rank or a Gary Shaw or a Golden Boy, maybe they do some of that drug testing on their own as well. And so hopefully that happens. But I do know, at least I know specifically with the Ultimate Fighter TV show, they do their own drug tests, and if the guy fails it, they're automatically disqualified from the show. So at least that's somewhat of a step by a promoter that I